It is.
Okay, it shows that we're live. Let's see if we are, in fact. Can you hear me okay, Mike? Oh boy, what did I do wrong?
Let me see if I.
Yep, here we are. Okay, we're good.
Well, it says that you're live and
Yeah,
have
we're
been
live.
live for 25 seconds.
It's an embarrassing 25
Okay,
seconds.
good.
Good evening, everybody. Tonight is December 12th, 2024. I have my buddy on tonight, Mike Trezza, to talk about some current events, some stories that happened over the last week or so, 10 days, something like that. Good evening, Mike. Welcome.
Thanks, Ray. Always great to be with you. And I have to say, um, you're looking as if you have a whole new approach to your physical presence this evening. I got to tell you, your show the other night with former comptroller. I can never say that word. Comptroller. Do you actually pronounce the
I'll be
MT? What
honest
do
with
you
you. I
say?
think there are times you
Control.
do and times you don't. There's a controller and then there's a
Like I'm
comptroller. So I think there's two different jobs, but yeah.
controlling things.
You cut out there for a second, Mike. I don't know. Can you say that again? That last part? Oh, Mike?
Well, I just wanted to say that your show with former comptroller Mara got a lot of really, really good info. A number of the issues that you guys spoke about resonated with me anyway. And obviously, we here in Suffolk have similar issues, if not exactly the same. Obviously, you guys made a distinction between Suffolk and Nassau on the casino side, and you asked Mr. Maragos for some predictions on how the additional revenue stream of a casino, the prospective casino that's being proposed in the Nassau hub would affect. And it seemed like he was generally pretty positive on it. So it was a really good show.
Well, thank you. And thank you also for being a good friend and giving me some constructive criticism, which I need all the time. So thank you very much. And I'm happy we're doing this tonight. You know, lots of stuff going on in the world, in the country. Let's get to it. What are you thinking about these days, Trez?
Well, it seemed to me like there were two big stories this week in the news. And even though they're nowhere near related, it is easy to link them together because I think the capture of the suspect in the killing of the healthcare CEO happened about the same time as the verdict in the Daniel Penny case. So let's start with Luigi Mangione or Mangione, right? You probably don't even want me saying his name, and a lot of people don't want his name said, and I understand that. Um, I said something to you that I think you had a little bit of a hard time um, dealing with, which was that I can understand the frustration that would drive somebody to want to do such a thing. Now, that is not in any way, shape, or form me saying he was justified or that what he did was a good thing. It was in no way, shape, or form a good thing. The frustration level, given um, some of the inequities of the healthcare system, some of the frustrations people have with the healthcare system, um, that would lead somebody to want to think that way. Obviously, to take that level of action is very, very extreme. Now, I'm glad that they caught the guy. Um, Not very surprisingly, I'm to a little bit to the left of you on my thinking around this. However, I will say that I thought the language that Ms. Warren used yesterday in framing this issue, uh, I actually thought that was disgraceful. I mean, when you say let this be a warning to CEOs, it really does sound like you're um, in some way applauding the actions of this individual, which she shouldn't be. And I am in no way doing that. So let's start with that.
Oh, I'll tell you, Trez, my thought on it is that somebody asked me online, he thought I was getting a little bit too into this issue. And I said, I forget subconsciously, I remembered that I did a project about 15 years ago on 55th. And I know that particular portion of the block very, very well where this happened, right by the hotel. So when I saw that, I visualized the block. I remember walking on that street, a million times. And then as a father, you think about the children. You think about the fact that he had two boys, and I think about that as a father myself, and I really felt badly for his children. And then you look at what happened here, and let me just say this regarding the suspect: nobody knows what his motivations are. This is just now breaking. This is just now coming out, and a lot of
Well, that's true.
people were immediately. I mean, I can tell you within minutes of this guy being arrested, people were talking about him, being an agent of change for healthcare, and he must have been a claim because we know what that's all about. I know all about that. I really, truly do, and I'm happy to explain to anybody who wants to question that what I'm referring to. It was a very, very difficult time fighting with an insurance company about something very specific that I needed for a family member. But the point being that people just supposed that he must have been denied a claim. Listen, when he got arrested, he looked like he was very healthy. He was fighting with the police. He looked like any 26-year-old man, in good shape looked like. And so it's frustrating when people must assume that he must be this good person. And what if he's just a crazy nut job? What if he's just motivated because he just hates everybody who's got money, even though he comes from money? Who knows what this guy's about? It's
Yeah.
just
Well,
now coming out.
that was the thing that as the case started to unfold after the arrest, and we started to learn a little bit more about this guy. That was the thing about it that didn't make sense at all. If somebody was to shine a light on this issue and get people talking about it, and let's face it, since his arrest and really since the murder of the CEO, we have been talking about some of the frustration the general public feel with the healthcare industry. So if that was his goal, Ray, I would say maybe he accomplished that objective. I do agree with you. He's a very, very strange messenger for this particular message. A guy who comes from wealth, a guy who comes from privilege. And to your friend who commented to you about a typical Democrat, well, his family happens to own some of those some of those right wing talk stations that conservatives seem to love so much. So, nah, wrong again on that one. But I mean, clearly, to your point, I don't know what this guy was thinking. I don't know what he was feeling. I mean, it would seem like even if he were denied coverage for a procedure, that the family would have money to help him out, assist him with that. So I don't exactly know what the situation was in terms of his specific grievance. We've gotten dribs and drabs of some of this stuff about a back surgery that he had or needed that he was denied, and and it was funny on one of the talk shows they were having this discussion about when you're actually in in a state of emergency. I mean, you don't want to know who your anesthesiologist is, whether this person is in network, out in. What are you
But
going to say to the guy when you're flat on your back and you have an
yeah,
emergency C-section or emergency surgery? Hey, are you in my network? Yeah, come on, that's ridiculous. And then you get a bill for $20,000 at the back end because the guy never bothered to ask you what coverage you have, or hey, I know
But
you're in distress right now. Can I see your card?
But that,
Yeah.
but that, but Trez, that's the problem with this conversation, and in terms of how we talk about this guy, we can agree, and we could talk for days and months and years about the maladies of the healthcare industry. The issue is this: if what you're saying is that perhaps he was denied a back surgery, the story came out, the picture, the photograph of him shirtless in Thailand hiking. I think it was this past. How many people do you know waiting for back surgery go hiking in Thailand?
Well, again, I mean, you're trying to connect the dots. You don't know when that photo was from. It could have been from 5 years ago. It could have been
Right,
before
but
he
what
had
I'm saying
some
is
sort of
that
back injury.
we're automatically assuming that this must be what it is. And by the way, right before we started this podcast, I think I saw something that said that the New York, the NYPD, is saying that he was never a client or a customer or an insured from United Healthcare. So
Wow.
he may not have been angry at United, or maybe it was a family member that had an issue with United. But one thing that seems to be clear is that he himself was not a United insured.
Right. And again, since his arrest, we've all been trying to connect the dots. We've all been trying to, eat the breadcrumbs that have been laid out and figure out what exactly this guy's grievance was specifically, if there is even one. To your point, he could just be a total nut job, right? That went off the grid, was estranged from his family for whatever reason. It could have been a family squabble over money. It could have been,
Right.
it could have been something stupid or something important. So we don't even know that. Everybody's speculating, but the thing is that a couple things are important to note here. Number one, I don't necessarily know that this line us up along Democrat or Republican camps. So for somebody to say something so asinine as, oh, what a typical Democrat. And secondly, Ray, and I don't want to hold you responsible for things. I know you have a wide range of people that come on your postings and comment, which is, listen, it's their prerogative. I know you like to get a variety of comments, but I thought one of the silliest comments, I'll put it kindly, one of the silliest comments I saw on your thread was, why isn't anybody talking about gun control behind this issue? Wait a minute. Gun control? This issue with this guy shooting the CEO had absolutely zero to do with gun control. First of all, it was a ghost gun. The guy didn't purchase it, he made it. That, at least that's the assumption that everybody's under right now. Second of all, even if he had bought it, Ray, it's a handgun. He's a 26-year-old man who, as far as we know, up until this time had zero criminal record. What Democrat or anybody of any party do you know that's trying to outlaw the opportunity for a non-felony convicted, reasonably healthy 26-year-old man not to be able to buy a gun? I mean, that's ridiculous.
No,
I thought it was the silliest comment on there. It's this
can
issue
I tell you why I think you're
with
wrong?
this guy has nothing to do with gun control. Nothing.
No, but can I tell you why you're wrong, Mike? I'll tell you why I think you're wrong.
Well, you could tell me why you think I'm wrong.
Yeah. No, I think you're wrong in the way you're looking at it, because I brought
Okay.
up the question about gun control also. My
Okay.
point is this: what you just discussed. First of all, this is another instance of senseless gun violence, and I'll tell you exactly why. Whether or not he had a right to buy a gun somewhere else, what seems to be clear is that this was not a New York resident. And by law, as far as I know, I'm not an attorney, but as far as I know, you're not allowed to bring a gun into New York City if you have it registered somewhere else and you don't have the appropriate permit in New York City. It's specific to New York City. I don't think it applies to New York State. I could be wrong. But by no means are you allowed to have a handgun or a ghost gun and carry it from one state to another. And the one thing this kid seemed to be is a little bit of a nomad. So I think he was based in, where was he from, Trez? He was from, was he from Pennsylvania?
Maryland.
No.
Maryland.
I'm sorry, Maryland, right. He was from Maryland. Yeah. He lived in Hawaii for a period of time. He's walking around New York City. So the question about gun control is this. It's not, how do we feel about guns? It's about, where's the enforcement? How do we handle a situation like this? Why is he walking around with a ghost gun, which may not be legal anywhere else in this country as well? I don't know. The question about guns is that should be the subject. Talking about the insurance industry it's how are you going to talk about the insurance industry? I mean, if he killed a baseball executive, are we going to talk about the? We'll get to that later, but are we going to talk about?
Right. You're missing the point. None of the proposals people have that would constitute, in my view, or even yours, common sense gun legislation would stop a guy from using 3D printing to manufacture his own gun. What law that was ever proposed and not turned down would have stopped that guy from creating his own gun? So it's not a conversation at all about gun control at all. I don't even see that as being part of the equation. I thought that was ridiculous.
You'll see tomorrow or whenever he gets extradited. I don't know if it's going to be tomorrow, but you'll see when he gets extradited to New York. I'm sure, and without being an attorney, I'm sure that among his many charges that he's going to be facing is going to be something to do with the gun and his inability or the illegality of carrying it into New York City. But the point being is this: the issue about the healthcare industry. Where do we start? Where do we finish? It's such a, you could blame the CEOs, but Mike, what about the tens of thousands of people who work for these companies? If there was a claim,
but he didn't shoot them, did he?
No, but by somehow entertaining why he may have done this, it puts them at risk.
Okay, all right, but the thing is that for us to sit here and pretend like people aren't making really crazy money in this industry that denies people, that victimizes people in this way. Again, not justifying a shooting, not justifying murder, ever. But for us to pretend that that's not, listen, no less right of a person than Joe Rogan was just saying yesterday, how really scummy and disgusting the whole healthcare industry for profit is. So, I mean, it's not like it's just coming from one side, right? I think people are starting to wake up to the fact that, hey, listen, I am 100% a capitalist. I believe in anybody making a lot of money doing whatever it is they do or want to do for a living. There are just some industries where it's supremely distasteful to see people making millions of dollars. And by the way, being accused of insider trading and all these other, really egregious type of financial acts, while people are being denied, while people are losing not just their life savings, but their homes to medical bills. I mean, it really is. How can you look at that and say there's not something really wrong with that,
Well, but let's continue where you left off. What about, in addition to the insurance industry with regard to healthcare, what about the pharmaceuticals?
Right? No, it's true. Listen, I mean, I think if people knew who those people were, who knows? I mean, I don't want to sound like Liz Warren because I think what she said was absolutely disgusting. But I mean, if I were one of those people, I'd be watching my back now as well. It's not just hospitals. It's not just health insurance. It's also the pharmaceuticals. They're probably worse than the other two I just mentioned.
Let me tell you how stupid this kid is. And that's the word I want to use. How stupid he is.
Oh, he's a moron.
How many lives, here's what's going to end up happening. You're already seeing some of these stories come out. The healthcare executives who now worry about their lives, they are scrubbing their names from some of the websites. Their names are coming off. You may not know who the directors of the board of directors are for some of these companies. You may not even know who leads some of these companies. Further, at a bare minimum, let's talk about the fact that this guy as a CEO, for whatever reason, did not have security. Maybe he felt as if he didn't want to waste the money on it. That's a noble thing. He didn't have any security with him. You think another executive is going to make that mistake? They're going to spend millions and tens of millions of dollars security. Where is that going to come out of? It's not coming out of their salary. It's going to be further diluted in terms of premiums, however you want to look at it. This is going to have the counter effect. It's not going to have the effect that he intended. There's not going to be legislation that's passed. When a child dies in a horrible accident or something, they pass a law in honor of. This is not going to be that. There's not going to be a Luigi law. There's nothing going to come of this. He achieved nothing. And honestly, he had all the potential in the world to walk into that meeting, to crash the meeting, and to say, "Hi, my name is Luigi, and this is what my grievances with you are." And if he was well spoken, which he appears to be, he may have had an impact. He's going to be in jail with other criminals for the rest of his life.
Again, right. I want to be careful here, not to sort of frame this as admiration, because there is none. But if his objective was to get people talking about how shady and how disgusting the for-profit healthcare industry, and again, we can not just include health insurance, we can include pharmaceutical companies and hospitals in there. I mean, even you the other day with Mr. Maragos, you were talking about, Nassau County basically having on a yearly basis to bail out NUMC, right? And I guarantee there's some hospital administrator pulling down a 7 or 8 figure salary. I mean, that's mismanagement. That's corporate greed. So I mean, if his objective was in some insane way to get us talking about the healthcare industry, even at the expense of his own freedom and ultimately his own life, because I do agree with you, his life now, for as long as it lasts, is going to be it's going to be completely fucked, deservedly so.
It's murder, gun charges, whatever else they're going to get him on. I hope they throw the book at him. And if the explanation that everyone wants from him, I hope he gives it to his family, who he probably deserves some kind of an answer to. I couldn't care less if he speaks or doesn't speak. I don't care what he wants to say. To me, he's a criminal. And I think if a conversation about healthcare in this country should be had, and it's such a big conversation that it has nothing to do with what this guy did. It has nothing to do with it. What he did was just murder. He took away a father from their children. And those poor kids are going to have to live with not only the death of their father, but that stupid video, for the rest of their lives. I mean, what kind of impact on a family did this moron have? And not to mention his own family, who seemed to be very, very well situated. I don't know how else to say it. Very well to do.
But Ray, one point I did hear somebody make that I thought was a good point was, who knows if at some point this gets to be like the conversations we have had in the past about gun control that do make sense after incidents like Columbine, after incidents like Sandy Hook, after incidents like Las Vegas and Parkland. Does it come onto our radar screen for a couple days and all of us, get on a video or get on a talk show and just spout out silly opinions and it goes nowhere, and in a few days we forget about it and life goes back to normal? Or is this going to be the start of a conversation that we should have been having a long time ago? Because quite honestly, to whoever it was that made that point about gun control, I mean, these incidents do pop up with mass killings, whether they're in a school or at a concert or at a church or someplace else. And we all, wring our hands together for a couple days about, oh, isn't it awful? And then after 2 or 3 days of finding out who the suspect was, why did they do it, what's their major problem, we forget about it and go back to, whatever the next hot story on the news cycle is. So
listen, I don't want to. All I can say is the only conversation that's worth having is, when does the trial start, and how much evidence are they going to pile up, which is overwhelming, by the way. Let me read a comment. Mike Godone chimed in and said the positive rhetoric from some citizens towards this guy is disgraceful. Yeah, I mean, I just think it's more of the same. I think that we have to think that we have to condemn this for what it is. It's murder. Any other conversation to be had about this industry, like I said, it's a poor analogy, and I don't want to talk about murder necessarily, but I think there's too much money in sports. I think there's too much money in a lot of industries.
Mike, how are you? Thanks for listening and commenting us, buddy. That's very, very nice. Good to hear from you.
You can make the same point about a lot of different industries and a lot of different issues, and you have a moral base on anything. I mean, there's a basis. You can use it as a justification for everything, and it's just, this is murder. And I don't know. It's hard for me to think about anything else other than that.
Well, you know what, Ray, I do want to make a point, and this is one I don't think you're going to agree with, because you and I were more or less on the a similar page in terms of the Luigi Mangione case, but where you and I are not necessarily on the same page was obviously the verdict was handed down this week in the Daniel Penny case,
Hmm.
which I actually saw as being at the very least manslaughter. I thought the jury in this case, and again, obviously, I'm going to admit I wasn't in the courtroom. I didn't hear the evidence they heard, but I thought the jury really um, got it very wrong in this case and really sent a dangerous message. And what's bothered me about the reaction to that is how are we on the one hand calling deservedly so, Luigi Mangione, a murderer and a low life and a whack job and this and everything else. But yet, people are calling Daniel Penny a hero and and a great citizen and should get a medal. Well, I mean, to me, the only difference really is if you take a look at the two victims. One guy was successful, educated, rich, white. The other guy was poor, black, um, most likely insane or very much on his way there. And I think what that jury said to the family of Jordan Neely and really to us all was that because he's not a CEO or a guy that makes a lot of money or is educated or successful, his life has no value. I think that was the very clear message, and I actually thought it was very regrettable that that was the decision they handed down. I don't see how you um, call this guy Luigi a murderer, which he is. I agree with you, and then turn around and call Daniel Penny a hero. To me, he's not that, right?
You a moment ago you said that you described him as contrasting the two. You said that Jordan was poor, black, and may have had some mental issues. One of the differences with Daniel, the issue here though is that Daniel is not responsible for him being poor. He has nothing to do with it. He's not responsible whether he's black and some of the opportunities he may not have been afforded because of racism. Maybe if that's the argument, has nothing to do with Daniel Penny. The third part is the most
Well,
interesting.
I mean,
Any
It
mental,
did once Daniel made the decision to grab the guy from behind and choke his life
but
out. See,
but hold on.
that's when that decision did affect that
The
guy.
third part you mentioned, the mental health thing, all three of those things in and of itself, you're all right about. You're right about all those things. There might be a reason why Jordan Neely can make an impact, and that impact is because let's talk about mental health care. Let's talk about all the crazies running around in the subways tonight. And I say crazies, I'm saying it not in the sense that they don't deserve treatment. They deserve treatment. They need to be treated. But when you look at, some of the actions of government, who do you blame for Jordan Neely's mental illness? Who do you blame for his lack of treatment? You don't blame Penny. You blame the system. Let's talk about the systematic failures
No,
rather
see,
than
but
talk about.
that's not what I want to talk about in relation to this. If you feel that unsafe, you know what you have the prerogative to do, Ray? I've been on the C train often and the D train very often, going from downtown to midtown or wherever. Okay. Both of my sisters live in the city. My daughter lives in the city. I take the subway. I won't say often, but I take it. Okay. And if you don't think I've encountered my share of crazy people that are loud and that seem menacing in some way, and if I feel that threatened, Ray, you know what I have the prerogative to do? I have the prerogative to get off the train and go take another train or go take a bus or go take an Uber or walk the rest of the way. That's what Daniel Penny had the right to do. And that's what every single person on that train had the right to do. And if the people prosecuting that case didn't make that point. I want to know why they didn't make that point. Because here is the first thing they tell you to do. When you're in a situation that seems threatening, you are obligated to try to extricate yourself from that situation. You don't make yourself the judge, the jury, and the executioner all in one. Why? Because you happen to be a Marine 8 years ago? Who gives a shit? I
Can
mean,
I say
sorry
something?
for sounding angry about that. I
But
appreciate his service, okay? But
one,
you're not a
but listen,
Marine, you're not a cop, and you have no fucking right to put your hands on that man.
the
I would
glaring,
I would
yeah,
have asked this question right. Here's the questions I would have asked. Number one, how many times did Mr. Neely put his hands on you? Number two, how many times did you see Mr. Neely put his hands on anybody else? Number three, I happen to know because I've been on the subway enough times. The average length of time between stops is somewhere between 3 and 4 minutes. So if this menacing behavior, this threatening behavior, this behavior that compelled you to step in and protect everybody on this train, you're the great American hero with the blonde locks flowing down around you. I mean, wait, nobody had a chance to escape this menacing? Nobody had the chance when those doors opened at 14th or 23rd or 34th to get their asses off the train or move to another car and say, okay, this is getting too crazy for me. Did the guy attack anybody to the best of your knowledge, Ray? Mr. Neely, did he attack anybody?
let me just pick up on a couple of things. Number one, the defense counsel did a great job because they didn't argue the morality of what he did, although that's obviously the topic at hand. What they really talked about was, did he die from this chokehold? And that's why this was an acquittal. Because if you listen to the underlying physical condition that this individual was in, Jordan, he died because he had a lot of underlying conditions, including his toxicity report, which I just butchered that word, but his report. He had things in his system. He had a condition. He had a bad case of sickle cell anemia, I believe.
Right. Who was the guy with the loose cigarettes? Was that Eric Garner? Right.
Yeah.
Didn't they say the same about him after the cops choked the shit out of him? Oh, it was his
but
underlying health issues.
I think that was part of it. But let me finish.
That's a jerk job.
The whole first part of what you said was about, did he feel threatened? Nobody alleged that this guy came up to Danny Penny and said, "I'm going to do this to you," because clearly, I don't think Daniel Penny would have felt intimidated. The whole testimony was all about other people on the train and what was going on in the car. And to your point, yeah, you could have gotten out maybe in the next 2 or 3 minutes. I don't know. But how important was the testimony of the people who were on that train? Clearly, that's what got Daniel off this case. It wasn't what he believed. It was what everybody in the car believed, that this guy was a threat. That's what got him off this case. And that's why this was a fairly decided verdict. It's not that this is a glaring case of misjustice. This is well contemplated. The prosecution put forth their evidence. The defense brought forth the people who were on the train. They brought forth the report, his blood report, to see what was in his system. This was a guy, if you want to call him a victim, which maybe he was a victim of society's failures. He was a victim of Governor Cuomo deciding that he wanted to...
Society didn't grab him from behind and choke the shit out of him, which, by the way, in my book is nowhere near heroic. You know what, Ray? If I'm menacing you, I'd rather you come at me to my face and punch me in my face and beat me to death than grab me from behind like a coward and choke the shit out of me.
You tell me, based on this logic...
That makes me a hero? That makes you a hero to do that?
Based on this logic, by the way, I mean, I hear it and I see it. You look at the city now and you look at some of the shenanigans go on now and you people fighting in the streets. Why would anybody get involved with anyone else's situation?
Exactly.
I don't believe that. I don't think that's
because I think this guy has a hero complex. He wanted to show everybody that he's the great protect, and he got away with it. He got away with murdering a guy, which is really what he did. I mean, I'm sorry to say, I don't need Daniel Penny protecting me. You want to talk shit to me on a subway train? You want to yell at me? You want to threaten me? You want to do whatever you want. If I feel threatened enough, I'll exit the train. I can ignore you for as long as you want to talk shit, right? The second you put your hands on me, obviously it's a different conversation. All right. I have the right to protect myself. Nobody asked this guy to intercede on his behalf. He had a hero complex.
Where does the name Colin Ferguson fit into this story? Because I recall
Nowhere.
being about
Nowhere.
Okay, I'll tell you where it was. I think there were a lot of people on that Long Island Railroad train from 1993, if I'm not mistaken, who would wish that there was somebody like Daniel Penny in that position at that moment.
So wait a minute. You're saying Jordan Neely shot people before he was killed?
No, clearly he did
Colin
not.
Ferguson shot people, right?
So wait,
Jordan
do
Neely,
you
to the
wait,
best of my
for the
knowledge
gun,
about this case, never put his hands on anybody.
Do you wait for the gun to come out before you can go after somebody? If someone says, I'm going to kill everybody on this train and I don't care what happens to me.
Right. After the guy died, you don't think they searched him for a gun? They found nothing.
He said, I'm going to kill everybody and I don't care what happens to me. Those were his words.
All right. So you know what you do? Get up and get your ass off the train at the next stop. It's probably 2 minutes away. I mean, come on. It's ridiculous. This guy had a hero complex, and he wanted the chance to like sort of be everybody's, Superman that was going to ride in and protect the general populace from this crazy black dude that was menacing, and it's bullshit to me. He got away with it.
What I thought was most interesting about this case was the question as to how long he held him. Because what I thought might be a weakness of the defense was that, did he go too far? Did he know with his training that he was going too far? That's what I was most interested in. That's what I was most interested in understanding. And I wasn't in the courtroom, as you know, neither of us were, but I listened closely to the radio and followed the story closely. As far as I understand it, it goes back to what I said a moment ago. They were really focused on, did he die from the chokehold per se, or was it a combination of things? And that's what I thought was most exonerating, because if they thought that maybe his hold was too long, I could see him being convicted of something, maybe the second charge that they tried to get him on. I thought that might be something that was weak. But once they proved that Jordan Neely had these underlying conditions, including all the drugs and whatever else he had going on in his system, all of that contributed to his death and may have been the main reason why he died. And that's what the expert witness testified to. That's what got him out. So it was a fair trial, but you can't dismiss the fact that he went on that train and he told everybody he was going to kill them. And he didn't care. He said, I don't care what happens to me. How do you not perceive that as being the same exact threat as what happened on that train 25 years ago, or whatever it was, 30 years ago?
I mean, again, your first obligation is to remove yourself, extricate yourself from a predicament. That is your first obligation. Nobody asked this guy to protect him. As far as I know, nobody said to him that day, hey, can you please protect me? I'm afraid of this guy. He took it upon himself. And, and he got away with it. And honestly, it's not really very surprising to me that people, or at least a certain demographic or ideological group of people are hailing this guy as a hero. I mean, listen, all I would say is reverse what Daniel Penny looks like and reverse what Jordan Neely looked like, and then tell me that Trump and all his cronies would be attaboy on that. Because I guarantee, Ray, they would not. They would not.
Listen, you're not seeing a lot of widespread protest over this. You're not seeing that.
No, because he got off the hook.
No, other way around. What I'm saying is that in the case of George Floyd, there was all kinds of, obviously in the aftermath of that, there was.
Well, we all saw the video on George Floyd. What did we see on this? We saw
the video.
A couple still photographs. So I mean, that video was like
there's a video
it was 2 seconds long, right? I mean, it wasn't somebody kneeling on someone's neck for 8 minutes. I mean, come on, it's not the same thing.
Half the people, if not more, who testified in the favor of the defense were minorities.
Hey, listen.
This is not a race issue per se. The race issue comes into why didn't he receive the care before he got into this situation? There you can argue the systematic failures or whatever, but talk about how come he's clearly in need of mental health care. How come the state didn't take care of him? How come the state didn't? They're closing down mental hospitals. They're taking away beds. There's beds sitting empty in Creedmoor. How come they're not doing more?
All
That's the
right,
real
so
story here.
you want the circuity of this conversation? Let's go back to the top because of the greed of the healthcare industry that says we have to get paid for everything. I mean, who's going to pay to take care of this guy, right?
And by the way,
I mean, is
nobody.
Brian Thompson gonna pay to get him taken care of? I doubt it.
You talk about the differences between between the two cases, and let me just say this clearly: in the case of Luigi, who had a manifesto and had planned out this murder over a period of time and wrote down his thoughts and everything else, this was premeditated murder.
I understand that's a difference. I understand that.
Yeah, but Daniel, even if you say that he had the hero complex and all those things.
Clearly,
he wasn't on that train looking for trouble. He wasn't on that train looking to be a hero. He was there for a very specific purpose, for a job interview, as I understand it. He wasn't looking to be in that situation at that moment in time, and that has to be part of the equation. You can't just say that he wanted to be a hero. Yeah, he may have wanted to be a hero. I want to be a lot of things. It doesn't mean I'm going to do it tomorrow. It means that he was going about his day. The situation happened the way it is. Nobody should celebrate a death, but it's, the jury spoke. It's a fair verdict.
Hey, listen, Ray, I have too much respect for the legal system of this country to make a big stink about it. But I mean, there are times that I don't think prosecutors or defense do a great job. And to that point, let me just ask you one question. OJ was acquitted. You think he did it?
Yeah, I do think he did. Sure.
Okay. So did that jury get it? I was just trying to. Did that jury get it right? Did that jury get it right? Did Marcia Clark and her staff do a great job? Clearly, if you followed that case, and it was much easier to follow it because it was in our faces constantly, day after day. Clearly, the prosecution in OJ's case didn't do a good job. Generally, they didn't do as good a job as the defense team, and the jury might not have gotten it right, or maybe they did, based on the way that the evidence was put before them and some of the legal definitions. So, listen, again, I respect the legal decision. I don't think they got it right, and I worry, quite honestly, right. You want to talk about copycats? I worry about the implications of a verdict like this. Next time somebody with money, with privilege, says they were menaced by somebody who is poor, who might have some mental challenges, who is a minority, what's next? Well, listen, Daniel Penny got off the hook. Why can't I kill this guy and just adios?
Why shouldn't people go shoot up other CEOs and find a reason to justify it?
Well, because this guy's going to get found guilty. You can almost bet your bottom dollar of that.
There are people who go to Washington, D.C. and burn themselves and think they're making a point. If somebody's willing to put themselves in jail, if someone's willing to put themselves in jail, they can go out and kill CEOs tomorrow and protest anything you want them to protest. And then we can start a conversation about whatever it is that they wanted to protest. But ultimately, it's still murder. I'll tell you something funny, though. I wanted to tell you a funny story. I just thought of this as we were doing this podcast, and I didn't realize it till earlier. I hired somebody who was a crazy guy from the subway. I hired somebody 15 years ago, 16 years ago.
What do you mean from the subway?
In other words, the person, it was a construction project. And what brings it all full circle to me is that the project was on 55th Street. It's exactly the same project I referenced earlier when I said I worked on that block for a while. It's the same project. The individual who I hired was in the construction field, and he did a very specific task, and he did it very well. He was a taper. But on his way into work and his way home, he was also known as the Earth Angel. And if you go onto YouTube, anybody watching can do this. It's actually pretty funny. He goes onto the subway, and he had this folder, and he would put it in front of his face, and he would say, "I'm the Earth Angel." And at various points, he would, just start spewing some rhetoric. I'll put it that way. Now,
he didn't sing the song "Earth Angel, Earth Angel."
No, but I'm actually, after this is over, I'm going to send you links. But you got to look at this guy. He was I found him to be funny. All right. I didn't find him to be a threat to me at any point in time. He did his job. He was a little bit older. But to people on the train, if you look at some of those videos, there are people, particularly some women, who thought that he was, potentially a threat. And, we laughed it off. It was a long time ago, and I had nothing to do with it. I mean, I knew him for work. I didn't know anything he did. But I kind of heard the stories about all of this, and I watched the videos. So, and it happened on the same block as where this other person was murdered, the CEO. So it's kind of a weird connection I have to this. But, the idea about the subways and stuff like that, talk about the policing on the subways. Do we have enough policing? Do we have enough this or that? I just think that this is being looked at the wrong way. This is not a case of racism. This is not a case of any of that. Maybe the hero complex, maybe if you want to talk about that a little bit. But the idea that,
Right.
Daniel,
Reverse it. Black ex-Marine kills crazy white dude on the subway, and then see if MAGA supports this. Get him off the hook. He's a hero.
Okay, but
Not a chance, right?
So hold
Right.
on. You're
Not a
grouping,
chance,
you're grouping. See, this is what you're drawing a very broad stroke. You're saying anybody who thinks that Daniel Penny is not was
No,
justified.
that's not what I said. I asked you to reverse the roles of the two people, just specifically with regard to race, because there are crazy homeless white people. I've encountered them many, many times. And so somebody who's black, who's an ex-Marine, takes it upon himself to choke out that guy. You think MAGA is going to come down on, hey, what a hero? Because I can tell you right now, not happening.
Look, in New York City, the jury heard the people. I'm saying New York City, which is traditionally, let's say Democratic, right? So, New York City jury heard the people who were on the train, the people who were witnesses on the train, the people who maybe felt threatened. The defense
Okay.
did nothing to sort of contest the testimony of any of those people. They wanted the testimony. I think they called them as witnesses. So the idea is that the people who were on the train who said, yeah, I did feel threatened. And I think there were people, minorities. I felt threatened by this guy.
Have you ever felt threatened?
Rarely.
Have you ever felt threatened?
Rarely. I have to think about that one. It's been a while.
Okay. I have. And ask me how many people I've killed. None. So all I'm saying, right, is a couple things. Number one, I don't think he had to do that. Number two, I think the jury got it wrong. I respect the legal process. If he's off the hook, he's off the hook. I don't have to like it. So we'll agree to disagree on that point.
There's no way of knowing. In 1993, there was no way of knowing whether Colin Ferguson was bluffing or he was telling the truth about what he was going to do until he did it. Unfortunately, he did what he said he was going to do. But he did the same thing. He said what he was going to do when he was on that train. I know that. I remember reading about this. He didn't just do it. He said he was about to do something, and then he did it. What happened here was that Jordan Neely said he was going to do something. Daniel Penny stopped him, and then it was determined that he was, let's say, bluffing. He didn't have a gun. But there was no way of knowing that. And that's the whole part that I'm trying to say, that he didn't know that when it happened. How were you supposed to know what's in his pocket? Is he supposed to search his body while he's restraining him? No, he doesn't know what he has and doesn't have. He didn't even know he was dead until after, I think he didn't, they said in the police station, he didn't even know he was dead. It wasn't like that. I mean, that's what the witnesses said. I wasn't there. Clearly, the witnesses decided that there was a threat there.
There's a lot about that case that bothered me, and there's a lot about the reaction to the case and to the verdict that bothers me. So, listen, I said my piece about that. I respect the verdict, and we move on. That's all.
I got to ask you before we wrap it up, Trez. I got to ask you. It's been an interesting week, but here we are on Thursday, and we see that Juan Soto is now officially a New York Met and is no longer a New York Yankee. And I have to ask you about something I found out just recently. I found out. I want you to comment on this. I read something that some of the papers are reporting now that one of the issues that Juan Soto had was with the Yankees, some Yankees, including Aaron Judge, being politically on the other side of him, and he didn't feel comfortable in that environment.
Wow.
And I just read that. Huh?
Wow, that one I did not hear. I heard the stuff about the suites. I heard the stuff
All right.
about Yankee security supposedly giving
Let,
his family
let
a
me
hard
just
time.
read. Give me a moment here, and I think I have it
Yeah,
here.
pull it up.
Um,
I have read the stories about Yankee security giving um, his family a hard time. I've heard the stuff about a suite. I've heard the stuff about extra incentives. And here's what I'll say to you, Ray, while you're looking for that. Okay,
uh-huh.
I hope you can do two things at once. Number
Yep.
one, um, if you want to make the most money you possibly can make, not as a health CEO, but as a baseball player, I have no problem with it. But you know what, though? When you're making up stuff to justify the fact that you took the most money, it kind of leaves me a little bit cold. Juan Soto had every right to take the most money. But again, I mean, a lot of this back end PR stuff has just gotten silly. Wait a minute. He didn't like Judge's politics. Wait a minute. He needs his own suite so that his family can stay safe at Shea. Wait a minute. It was all about family. The Mets made him feel like family, Ray. They made him feel like family. They took good care of his family. You know what? You know what family? He concerned himself with the Franklin family, as in Ben Franklin. That was his only concern. The rest of this stuff is back end PR. If you want to be a little bit greedy about it, you can be a little bit greedy about it. I don't begrudge you, and quite honestly, I'm not upset that Soto left. If Judge had left, I would have been upset because obviously he had a long-term relationship with the Yankees, with the organization, and with Yankee fans. So if he would have gone someplace else for more money, I probably would have been upset by that. But when I see the dollar amount that Soto was paid by the Mets, and I see what the difference is in their offer and the Yankees offer. I mean, Ray, when you're talking about three-quarters of $1 billion, that's billion with a B, and then you're talking about a difference of 5 mil. You know what that equates to in terms of percentage? That's not even two-thirds of 1%. And so if that's really going to make the difference for you, then I say, go get it, big guy. Go get it.
Allow me just to, before I get into the Soto for a second, allow me just to put this in some context. We're
Sure.
arguing a few moments ago about a CEO for the number 4 company in the country, the number 4 S&P 500 company making $10 million a year.
Correct.
And we're talking about people playing a game that you and I would play for free, okay, making whether
Well,
Soto
you say
made,
that now because you're not in the business. But if you were in the business and you saw the guy next to you making
no,
40
no,
mil,
no.
you want to make 50 mil. You want to say
No, no,
I'm
my,
better
my, my,
than you.
my point is not that. My point is that let's just shift, let's just take it, let's appreciate how much we're shifting our perspective. A moment ago, we're talking about a CEO being overpaid for $10 million. And now we're talking about a game. My question's different. I've seen people talk about eating the rich. Somebody I know and somebody you know on Facebook commented on my thread and said, it's time that we eat the rich. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, you're posting pictures of Yankee players every day. She happens to be a Yankee fan, no problem. Could be a Met fan. Does that mean eating players? How about I want to go protest the fact that I can't afford to take my kids to more than 2 or 3 games a year, and I go after a baseball player because I want to have a broader conversation about salaries in baseball. My point
Right.
is, I'm trying to tie the connection. But getting back to Soto,
Well,
yeah,
there is no connection because here's the thing. The thing is that you can live without baseball. I maybe cannot live without that emergency surgery. So one is life and death, and the other is the toy aisle. But I already said, Ray, and I 100% honestly feel this way. Um, Whatever the market will bear in something like entertainment and sports, if Taylor Swift wants to charge $1,000 a ticket for the worst seat at UBS next time she plays, she can do
right,
it. I can live without seeing Taylor Swift. My daughter can live without seeing Taylor Swift. If you had teenage daughters, they can live without Taylor Swift. I can live without Juan Soto and Aaron Judge for that matter, to be quite honest with you. But my thing about Soto was this. Again, um, there are very few of us who are not going to try to make the most money. If somebody's waving that kind of crazy money in front of you, you're going to take it. So I don't begrudge him. I'm honestly not that unhappy that he left. I don't want to tie up that kind of money in one player because, as was clearly demonstrated during the World Series, the Yanks need upgrades at a few different areas. And so with the money that they would have paid Soto, I really think they can get I want to see them guys who play the game the right way in terms of running the bases well, fielding their position, and not necessarily sluggers, but high on base guys. What you're going to find out about Soto, and this is not because he's leaving the Yankees, Soto, absolutely incomparable offensive player. However, a very, very mediocre outfielder. I didn't realize that until I watched Soto every single day this year. He's not a good outfielder, right? And he's really a very average base runner as well. So the offensive part of his game is superb. Is that $50 million a year superb? I don't know. You tell me at the end of this coming season if that's 50 mil.
I think the most interesting after I read, I'm going to read to you in a moment. But before I read it to you, I think Scott Boras just actually created a very interesting story.
No, you had it right the first time, Boras.
Right.
He's a bore and an ass.
Yeah, I think he created a controversy today because the quote that what I'm about to read you came from him. It's not that it's being reported, but it came from him today. He spoke about this, and I think he's probably going to alienate a lot of people in baseball by what he said. It's interesting. So what he said. Soto's agent, Scott Boras, said he also touched on how the Dominican star was irked by several players' political views, particularly their support for Donald Trump. Before Game 3 of the World Series, Aaron Judge and Anthony Volpe walked into the clubhouse donning Trump gear, finding it offensive to Latino Americans. We found several, and this is Scott Boras being quoted, we found several comments at his Madison Square Garden rally very offensive, agent Scott Boras said. Quote, to see his teammates condone that behavior certainly affected him. And then it goes on to say, when Soto met Mets superstar Francisco Lindor, he was much more comfortable with his views.
Okay. That's a jerk job, right? Nobody cares about politics inside a clubhouse. Listen, there's one reason and one reason only. Has nothing to do with suites. Has nothing to do with security, has nothing to do with the political views, has nothing to do with his family not being taken care of or how Stevie Cohen made him feel like family. They paid him more money. And, I'm going to pull a Ray Aurora right now. All right.
I'm worried. I'm
going to come in with a crazy conspiracy theory that I thought of, and see if you think it makes any sense, as you do from time to time. Okay. Do you think it's possible? And you always started with the words, do you think it's possible? Do you think it's possible that Hal Steinbrenner and Cashman were playing chess while Stevie was playing checkers, and that they stayed in the bidding as long as they did to drive Soto's price up, maybe hoping to hamstring the Mets' ability to sign other free agents?
I like the second part of what you just said, because if you were going to say just because they wanted to screw over the Mets, I was going to say
no.
But if
they're business people, right? There's one thing you could say about the Yankees. Obviously, they're too buttoned down, and that was one of the assertions made by Soto and his team, was that we were too buttoned down. We didn't make him feel like family. Okay, we didn't make you feel like family. All right, we'll invite you to the next picnic family reunion the next time.
By the way,
do you think that's possible?
Yeah, if they, I think the Yankees
they stayed in it as long as they could, but they wouldn't go an extra $5 million. I mean, does that seem a little?
Maybe, yeah. I can see it. By the way, this is going to add some juice to the Subway Series. We've needed some juice for a long time. I mean, when was the last time there was any buzz about the Subway Series? You can go back to the last time I remember being anything worth talking about was probably after
1997.
Huh?
1997.
That's a long time ago. That's like Clemens.
I
was going to say, what was the year that we dropped that pop-up?
That was '09 or '10. Luis Castillo, wasn't it? An A-Rod
Yes.
pop-up?
Yeah. That was
Luis
like the last
Castillo.
time, but we're talking about like 15 years of at least more, maybe more than, just who cares?
Well, you make a good point by mentioning A-Rod, though. It was the vitriol
yeah,
directed at A-Rod from Met fans because he
right,
wouldn't sign with them. I think
right.
you're going to see that same sentiment in reverse. I think when Soto does come back to the Bronx, all those people in the right field bleachers that last year were chanting "Resign Soto" are now going to be chanting something
What do you
a
call
little
them?
bit less civil.
What is it? The bitchy creatures? No, the bleacher creatures, right?
The bitchy creatures.
I forget what you guys call them. What do you call them?
I don't call them anything, but they call themselves the bleacher creatures.
Yeah, whatever. But the point is that it's going to add
Well,
some
wait a minute,
juice.
wait a minute. This is coming from a guy who has to go to a stadium where they do OMG every 5 minutes, and
Listen,
we
listen.
all hail the who's the Mickey D's character, the little
Yeah. The
fat
grimace, the
purple.
grimace.
Oh, the grimace. Yeah.
Well, listen. The worst thing we did was have that song coming out and the trumpet song for Diaz, and them
Oh,
marching.
it's enough already.
Um,
Oh my God.
no, but you know what? The best bargain in sports is, I don't go to City Field. The best bargain in sports is you could buy a 55-inch TV for $250 today and watch a game on a beautiful TV and save yourselves. How much do you think a hot dog is going to cost at City Field this year?
Oh, I was just talking about this with my buddy John, who we made a deal last year. He's a Met fan. I'm a Yankee fan. I said, listen, when we go to City, you get the tickets, you take care of everything, you drive there, and when we go to Yankee, I'll do the same. So they had jacked up the parking from 20, which they had a promotion for most of the season, to by the time we got there in September, it was 40, and this guy was losing his mind. Next year, I guarantee it'll be 60, and that'll just chip away at at Soto's salary.
I'll leave you with this. I often laugh to myself because people talk about Steve Cohen having all the money in the world, and they don't realize why he has the money, because he's a smart guy. So when they say, look, he's got 20 billion in the bank and this is chump change for him, he can afford it. He's going to front the money, but he's making it back on the back end. All your fees are going to go up, whether it goes up tomorrow or it goes up over a period of time. He's counting on making money from this. This isn't charity.
We'll see. We'll see. He's business smart. There's no question about that. It would be hard to tell a guy who has 8 billion or 10 billion or 20 billion. He's not smart when it comes to business. However, as we've seen, I still wonder if his baseball acumen needs a little bit of sharpening. And I say that because the last time the Mets and their fans were this excited was when they signed two guys. One, I know you were a big fan of, Ray. Max Scherzer and Verlander.
Yeah.
And that experiment
that didn't work out. That was
very abruptly mid-season. And Uncle Stevie still paying the bills, my friend. Still paying the bills.
Listen, whatever happened to Soto, I think we can agree on one thing, and I know we can agree on this, Trez, because I think you, clearly October proved it, right? So the best player in baseball is still Ohtani. Anyway, I think we should probably finish.
You were waiting to pull that one out of your pocket, but good job by you. All right, bud.
Thanks very much. See you soon. Merry Christmas. We'll talk before.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, everybody. Thank you.